Using its soft power. If you are growing in hard power, military and economic capacity, the way China has, you're likely to frighten your neighbors into coalitions against you. But if you can combine your hard power with soft power, attraction and persuasion, you make those coalitions less likely. And Hu Jintao said this in 2007 when he addressed the 17th Party Congress. He said China needs to invest more in its soft power. And they have done that. They've spent billions of dollars on Confucius Institutes and turning CCTV into an Al Jazeera of the world and so forth. The trouble is that it's difficult to combine hard and soft power together so they don't cancel each other out. The United States has made mistakes on this. The invasion of Iraq, for example, was very successful in hard power terms, very destructive to our soft power. But China faces a similar problem. They're concerned about American containment or America creating alliances against them. And then they are doing actions with their hard power, which are driving all these countries into America's arms. And they don't quite know how to get out of this. For example, if you take the Philippines, you set up Confucius Institute in Manila to make yourself attractive. Traditional Chinese culture is very attractive. And then you use your hard power to drive Philippine boats out of Scarborough Reef. And guess what happens? Instead of the Confucius Institute making China attractive in the Philippines, you get a very strong anti-Chinese sentiment over what is a little bunch of rocks. It is a very counterproductive strategy. And if you think of the alternative, usually when I ask my Chinese friends about this, they say, well, we have no choice. This is sovereign territory. We can't give this up. So what they're doing is sacrificing their larger influence in the region for a bunch of rocks. And you'd say, well, if those rocks are sitting on enormous amounts of petroleum or gas, maybe it's worth it. But as Holly Morrow has just published, that's not really the case. So think of a better strategy for China. Suppose China were to take the suggestions that Michael Fuchs and Bonnie Glaser and others have made and say, yes, we'll go for a binding code of conduct in the South China Sea. And we'll agree that in the East China Sea, this is a proposal that Kevin Rudd and I published in the Washington Post last spring. We'll agree that the Diaoyu Senkaku or Senkaku Diaoyu Islands should be put off for a future generation. In the meantime, they should not be militarized or inhabited, but turned into a marine ecological preserve. And if you had this larger perspective, China's natural influence in the region, which grows out of its overwhelming economic strength and those trade ties that Steve Bosworth was mentioning earlier, will lead it to a much better position than it's in now. So one of the real puzzles is, why does China, if it has the wisdom that was expressed by Hu Jintao at the 17th Party Congress, if it has the wisdom to combine soft power with hard power to create a smart power strategy, why hasn't it done it? Instead, what it's doing is a counterproductive strategy which is driving all its neighbors into the arms of the United States in the exact opposition to what it says are its objectives. So I would suggest that the real question that we ought to think about is, how can China really implement what Hu Jintao said in 2007, and which Xi Jinping has repeated, and develop a smart power strategy? That would be good for China, be good for the U.S., be good for the region as a whole. I hope that's provocative enough to stir some.
It would sell your book, too.
No, the book's already selling more than enough.
Joe, we have some people who are participating with you who might want to There's one, two of those folks.
Okay, well, to bring others into this, let me suggest that Ambassador Kondo, Zichi Kondo, who's Special Advisor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and is in Tokyo, might be willing to add his thoughts with this.
Hi, I'm Seiichi Kondo. I'm co-author of this book, Soft Power, Superpowers. Remember, well, the point I want to make is that I don't think China really understands what soft power means. Soft power is a kind of secret weapon. But what they have been doing is to explicitly use their culture and the Confucius institutions to attract others. But it is very clear what is behind this. So I don't like to talk too much about soft power of Japan because, as I said, it is a secret weapon. So I don't think China is really fully understanding the power of soft power. It's a kind of propaganda still. It's a stage of propaganda. So I hope Professor Nai will persuade them that what soft power really is. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We also are fortunate to have Professor Suzanne Ogden here with us, Professor Interim Chair of the Department of Political Science at Northeastern University. Suzanne, would you like to join in?
Just a brief statement. I think Japan has to think about their soft power too. Japan doesn't really do enough to project its own soft power. What is the equivalent of the Confucian Institutes throughout the world that China is doing? What is the equivalent of the millions of Chinese who are going abroad to study, as opposed to very, very few Japanese who are going abroad? We don't interact with the Japanese. We have thousands of, tens of thousands of Chinese students and scholars in the United States. We meet them. We're very impressed by them. We learn a lot about them. But we don't get that from Japan, and I think Japan needs to be out there more. They need to increase their own soft power and project it. Japan's soft power right now comes from their technology, from things like their culture, their manga, their anime, but they need more projections.
And let me
respond to that.
Yes, please.
Well, I can't really agree with you more. But what is even more important is to invite young people, young artists to Japan, because the power of soft power of Japan lies in nature, people's lifestyle, and all business and streets, clean streets, and so on. It is very difficult to explain this, all those things in words. But if you are here in Japan for 6 months, you will really love it, and you will understand what the real soft power of Japan is. So, of course, sending more students, people abroad, but inviting even more people to Japan to really feel the soft power of Japan. And 2020 Olympic and Paralympic Games, this is a great opportunity for us to do that.
Well, the nice thing about soft power is the win-win. If the attractiveness of Japan goes up in Beijing, and the attractiveness of China goes up in Tokyo, that's a win for both countries, and also in our benefit as well. But let's get a Chinese perspective on some of this question. And Zheng He is here. Perhaps we could invite you to give your perspective.
It is my great pleasure to be here to discuss this issue. Actually, I'm not an international affairs expert. I'm a Chinese politics expert. But I think that up to now, Chinese government hope to get political legitimacy from the good governance domestically through more transparent policy making process and more involvement and more empowerment by citizens this is good sign. For international politics, I think that good governance is also very important. Also, the international institutions meeting process involved all the stakeholders, they have equal seat, and how to make the international institution meeting process more transparent is very important. More conversation, more cooperation, more compromise. It will be a solution rather than confrontation and so on. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. But do you think it would be possible to see China accepting the kind of binding code of conduct for settlement of disputes over islands within the 9-dash line that Bonnie Glaser mentioned tonight? Can you imagine that being acceptable or not?
I think that actually the diplomatic practice is a kind of also kind of trial, error, and that really, yeah. But you know that if you have your policies, but it feedback, and then maybe it's a time, it's opportunity to change it. So for China, if maximize its own national interests, so I think that seeking cooperation, conversation is a better choice.
Professor John Quelch of the business school is, I don't know whether he's not with us physically tonight, but is he?
He got sick.
Oh, so he's sick, so he will not be able to join us. But shall we, maybe we can ask Andrew.
Thanks, Joe. Good to see you again after 6 years. I went to grad school here, and I remember seminars in this room. I'm so happy to be back. I have a few points that are coming off of what people have said. The first I'd make is that I don't think ASEAN is really a good location to solve the South China Sea dispute. China is clearly breaking international law for its own aggrandizement in terms of maritime territory, and ASEAN has within it Myanmar and Cambodia, which are essentially near client states of China. They're blocking any real moves by the ASEAN Corporation organization. The TPP and APEC are great ideas. I'm not sure how much influence they're going to have positively on the situation, as sometimes those kinds of Chinese economic access to countries greases the rails essentially for their influence, and they use that influence to stop any sort of confrontation against the types of aggrandizement that they're doing in the South China Sea. I think that U.S. allies are worried. I think that they're worried about the commitment of the United States if it came to war with China. And look at Scarborough Shoal. China has occupied Philippine territory, essentially, or exclusive economic zone for 2 years, and we really haven't done much about it at all. We definitely haven't done anything militarily about it. And I think that gives people pause about our commitments, our defense commitments to those countries. What I think we need to do is take a stronger stance, or what the United States should do is take a stronger stance in terms of its bilateral treaties. I think we should go beyond a bilateral treaty and have a strong multilateral defense treaty in Asia. I think that we should include Japan. I think we should include South Korea, the United States, Australia, New Zealand. Better democracies, because I think that's key in Asia. I think we should also have a partnership for peace program similar to that of NATO in Europe. I think a lot of the other democracies in the region should be included in that partnership for peace program, and will significantly strengthen the multilateral defense organization. U.S. to China defense expenditures right now are roughly 4 to 1. For every dollar China spends, the U.S. and our allies in Asia spend about 4. That's a big difference. We have the military power to stop China's expansions, but we're not using it. North Korea, of course, is another major threat. It's not just China. As far as Chinese legitimacy, I think China can gain legitimacy in the international arena by following international law. And I think it will. I think as long as China breaks international law, I think that countries that are being hurt by that will see China as a criminal, and I think other countries will see China as a criminal as well.
And it sounds to me like this is a new Cold War. Or am I exaggerating?
It's a dangerous situation. You've got Russia and China expanding territorially, right? And with military force, because China is using its navy against these small countries, and it's a very dangerous
So
situation.
we're going to surround them with military alliances, right?
I think we should have a strong democratic military alliance, just as we do in Europe.
Dick Rosecrans, you should get in this, but so should Holly Morrow, who has written a very good article about this.
Although that's not what I want to talk about.
All right, let's Dick go next.
It does seem to me we're at a choice point, and as some people around the table know, including particularly Joe, we've just finished a book on World War I and its implications for the future. If something as bad as World War I kind of occurred in 1914, are we sure that something like that could never occur again? Especially since when we look at the causes of World War I, none of them were inevitable. Things that happened actually had to happen. So we have to worry about something that is also accidental, causing conflict between ourselves and China over time. We have to take that very seriously. I would like to move away from international law. I think we will never solve anything in the Pacific through international law. Each of these countries has their own economic zone, China, which overlaps with China's 9 dotted line, so there's inevitably going to be conflict there. There is no international court that will resolve that conflict. That's simply going to go on. So what we should be doing in Asia is to move from de jure to de facto. Instead of trying to solve things at the international legal level, we should work together to work practically on solutions. For example, without deciding who owns the Senkaku to the Diaoyu Islands, it would be possible for China and Japan to work on developing a lattice work of drilling operations in the area nearby, so that they can actually share what comes out of that area without having to decide finally who owns it, because they will never decide who owns it. The same sort of thing is probably true in Scarborough Shoal. It's true in terms of Vietnam and so on. So I would encourage de facto to supersede de jure. And also, let me make one more comment. China will never be a member of TPP as long as these disputes are going on. It will never be allowed to join the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Only if these issues are settled in one way or another, and it need not be legal, it can be settled informally, will it be at all likely that China can join in the great advantages of TPP. When you consider that in the longer term, the basic thrust of Chinese trade is not in East Asia. The components have been added, the final goods have been assembled. They all go out to a worldwide market in Europe, in the United States, and other countries. And those kinds of things are crucial in the long term for China. So joining TPP could be very, very helpful to China, but it's not going to work unless there's some concrete agreements that allow other countries to participate with China in TPP.
Holly?
Maybe as a counterpoint to what was just said about international law, you know, a number of people brought up points about how when Americans make that point, though, is that the U.S. has not ratified UNCLOS. So if we talk
We're
about
obeying it, though.
what's that?
We're obeying it.
But that's different from ratifying.
Well,
and,
still,
and there's, you
it's
know,
again de facto, not de jure.
but I think we are on tenuous ground, and we are seen as being on tenuous moral ground when we lecture Asian states, China or anybody else, about the importance of obeying rules, a rules-based system based on UNCLOS, which is a treaty that we have not ourselves signed. So I would just make a push, as I have made in Washington for many years, that to be a proponent of this, we actually have to walk the walk, if you will, and ratify UNCLOS. Even though I know there's no real
You got to get the Senate on your
I
side.
know.